There's a lot to say about that dragon cancer, so let's get right to it with my very first review! That Dragon Cancer is the first project by Numinous Games. It's the story of a family that's going through the tragedy of losing a child to cancer. It's a very touching, very real story, and it's actually the story of the creators of the game. A lot of the game takes a very surreal look at how the characters are emotionally plotting their way through this very tragic situation. The father is drowning. He feels like there's no hope. He feels like there's no realistic way that he can just make it through this, and he's drowning. And in the game, you actually see him drowning in water, and there's a very surreal aspect to the game. It's not just telling the story of this family going through this crisis, but it's also taking you through the mental aspect of it as well in a way that I felt really compelling. And also for me personally, I felt that I really had a good connection to the story they were telling because I really felt like it mirrored my own family dynamic. The father in the game was a very realistic person. He was very much a realist, and he lost a lot of hope really quickly, and I felt like that would be my response to the situation at hand, whereas the mother, that's all she could cling on to. That's all she had. She had that hope. She couldn't let it go. And I feel like if this situation was happening in my family, that's how our family dynamic would respond to it, and that really dragged me into the game. I don't know how well that would work in other family dynamics, other people, single people, whatever, I'm not sure, but I know for me personally, that family dynamic in the game brought me into it, knowing that my family dynamic was very similar. And the game really tries to get you emotionally involved in the characters, in the moments, and they almost do a really good job until it turns into a video game. It does a lot of things that video game players will immediately push back against. It takes a lot of scenes and it stretches them out on purpose to make you feel uncomfortable, but unfortunately, it does them not really in the right way. There's a scene in the hospital room overnight where the kid is crying and he needs a drink. He's just crying, he's crying, and the father is just, he can't deal with it, he can't handle it. The fact that this kid just won't stop crying and he can't handle it. And in the moment, I understand what the game is trying to do. It's trying to make you feel what the father is feeling, and it almost works. Except for the fact that they start looping the same voices over and over again. They start using the same sound samples over and over again, and suddenly your video game mind starts to work and you realize, wait, am I supposed to be doing something? What am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do? And that was honestly one of the things that hit me the most throughout the entire game, was just me going, what am I supposed to do next? And when your brain is starting to go, what am I supposed to do next? When your video game mind starts flaring off like that, it really takes you out of the experience. It really takes you out of the emotions of what you're supposed to be feeling, what the game is trying to get you to understand in the moment. There's a lot of scenes like that. There's a scene where you're talking to the doctor where I honestly just had no idea how to progress the story. There's a scene in a church where I wasn't really sure if I was just supposed to be watching things happen or if I was supposed to be doing something to progress the story. The game is not very clear if you're supposed to be doing something specifically or if you're supposed to be waiting things out and letting it play out in front of you. It's not very clear at all. And unfortunately, so much of the game is littered with that feeling of what am I supposed to be doing next, that it really takes you out of the experience and it really takes you out of the emotionally impactful moment. Just enough to you're just like, oh man, I wish it was a tighter experience. Because the story that they're telling, I feel like it really needs to be told. And I feel like if these people continue to make games, that they will continue to improve. This is, of course, their first video game that they have made under this name, and I feel like the more games that they make, the better it's going to be. And I just really feel like a lot of this game is a missed opportunity to really sell an emotionally impactful story, because it just misses the mark on so many levels, so many times, and it just breaks the immersion. It just breaks the emotional immersion that you're supposed to have with these characters. Now, the choice to use a low polygon art style actually works to its advantage. It actually adds to the surrealist sort of aesthetic that they're really trying to go for. You're not just being led through the experiences of what this family went through. You're going through their emotional state as well. And the surrealist aspect of all of the graphics and everything really helps to establish that. And I think it works really well. Unfortunately, it's also dragged down by the way it controls. Instead of using very standard walking simulator controls, where you just move the stick and you move, you actually jump from point to point. And I think the jumping from point to point, and it's almost like it's made for like a VR setting. I don't really know why that choice was made. All I know is it really kind of took me out of the experience where I wasn't actually a person overseeing. I wasn't actually a thing in that universe. I was just a camera watching the thing. And maybe that was very direct, but I feel like it just, again, took me out of the experience. There's a lot of very little nitpicky things that I can bring up that for me really took me out of the experience. And unfortunately, a lot of those little things just welled up into one giant thing. That all being said, there was a lot that took me out of the experience, but I think the experience is still worth having. I think the idea that these people made this game is super important, and I think you playing this game is super important, if for nothing else than to understand what a family has to go through when dealing with this kind of thing. And as a parent of 4, it was really touching to know and to experience that, and it was really heart-wrenching to experience that through the eyes of a family that has gone through that. So do I recommend playing this game? Yes, I do. There is some problems with it, and it will take you out of the experience, and your video game mind will more get in the way than actually help. But at the end, I think it's a good experience to have, and I respect the people that made it, and I really feel like it's one of those important steps in interactive media where we're not just playing games anymore. We're telling stories, we're telling real stories, we're telling personal stories, and I find that's super, super important. I only wish it was a more streamlined, more polished experience, and I hope that their next game is a whole lot better.